Coming up on this episode of The Social Hour, Amber and I will speak with none other than Mark Cuban. Yes, you heard us right. He's got a new app. It's called Cyberdust. He's all about ephemeral messaging. He's going to tell us why it's the future. All that and a lot more coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for The Social Hour is brought to you by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is The Social Hour with Sarah Lane and Amber MacArthur, episode 155, recorded Thursday, March 27th, 2014. This episode of The Social Hour is brought to you by lynda.com. Learn what you want, when you want, with access to over 2,000 high-quality online courses, all for one low monthly price. To try it free for 7 days, visit lynda.com/social hour. That's LYNDA.com/social hour. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fun-filled episode of The Social Hour from Twit headquarters in Petaluma, California. I'm Sarah Lane.
And I'm Amber MacArthur, and I am in South Florida. Just got off a trip to Los Angeles and Las Vegas for a total of 48 hours. I was thinking about you, Sarah, because I was close enough to San Francisco, but not quite close enough to come and visit. So next time I'll have to visit you for sure.
Yeah, that's always a popular sentiment. People say, you know, I was in Los Angeles. I'm like, that's really, really far. It's a long state. But well, good. I'm glad that you are back in Florida. You look tan, you look rested, and without further ado, let's introduce our guest today, Amber, which you set up, so you get all the credit. So I'm going to let you introduce him.
Yeah, you know, we're really excited to have Mark Cuban on the show. He just launched an app called Cyberdust, a really interesting app, and it is definitely in line with some of the conversations, Sarah, we've been having about disappearing social media, about things going away like Snapchat, images and videos. But this particular app focuses on your text messages. So let's introduce Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
What's up, guys? How y'all doing?
Good, thanks. Thanks for being on the show. So, okay, so Amber's talking about Cyberdust, and it certainly plays into the whole ephemeral messaging movement. Why do you think that this is the future of how we communicate?
Well, you know, we're 10 years into Facebook, and we're really grabbing on to understanding what happens with our messages and anything that we do online over time, which basically is that we lose control. And I think with Snapchat, people started to realize it's not that big a deal to not keep pictures and not keep text. And, you know, people wanted to recreate what face-to-face conversations were like. And then in parallel to that, I think pretty much everybody's been burned because you send a text to somebody, no matter how innocent, or an email, or posted on Facebook, or replied to Twitter. And all of a sudden, whether it was an hour, a day, a week, or a year later, it showed up completely out of context from what you intended it to be. And I think having learned those lessons, people are adjusting. And that's why we've seen the big growth in ephemeral messaging platforms.
All right, so if I'm in the app and I'm sending you a message here, and I say, all right, you know, how long does this message last? It's 20 seconds, correct? You've got
30 seconds.
It's 30 seconds. Okay, and then it goes away because you've read it and you don't need to save it, and nobody needs to, you know, back it up in a data center somewhere.
Exactly. So what happens is the only time when you sent that message to me, it doesn't touch my phone. I have to be online in order to receive it. Once I receive it, then I open it, and you saw that little ball next to it. That ball gets smaller, and I have 30 seconds to read it once I've opened it. If I don't open it, then we store it on a server for up to 12 hours. And after 12 hours, if you haven't read it, then we delete it anyways. And, you know, you go on with life, and then I'll say, oh, you know, you'll say, did you get my message? And I'll say, resend it, just like if you didn't get a text or didn't get an email.
Mark, did you have, without revealing too much, did you have any type of personal experience where you thought, you know, this is a really great idea, people need something like this? Is it anything that, was there anything that happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I had to fight the SEC here in the United States, and it's not fun fighting the government. And even in lawsuits that I've been involved with in business environments, I mean, it's funny. I literally, this is no lie, I got sued because someone said that we destroyed a sex tape between me, Kim, and Khloe Kardashian that they had taken. You know, and I was hoping it was true, but it wasn't. And so you can get sued for anything. And what happens is when they do discovery, they look for everything that you have. And once they find it, whether it's the government or, I got in another lawsuit, they sued me. They said, you stole this idea from me. And I said, no, I didn't. They said, you know what? You're right. You didn't. We don't care. We're going to make you go through all this because it's more expensive for your insurance company, and they'll just settle with us. And the insurance company did. That's just the kind of the craziness that happens in business. And so as a result of those, I'm like, look, I've got to shrink my digital footprint. I don't want to have stuff out there. And when you think about texting, the minute you hit send on a text, you don't own it anymore. You don't have any control of that text at all. Whoever you send it to, even the most innocent message, whether it's personal or business, they take control. You don't know who they're going to show it to. You don't know if they're going to keep it. You don't know who they're going to forward it to. And 99.9% of the time, it really doesn't matter. But it's that 0.1% of the time or 0.01% of the time that can create all kinds of problems. And, it's just not worth the hassle. So I had one of my companies, Mention Mobile, create CyberDust.
So what about, there are, of course, the people who say, well, you can always take a screenshot. And,
Sure.
as it works with Snapchat, I might be alerted if you take a screenshot of something that I sent to you.
Which you would.
Right. But I still can't stop you from doing that.
Right. And so there's a couple things that we'll do. And here I've got a new version. I don't know if you can zoom up. This is a version coming out next week. And what we say at the top says chatting with. It doesn't show your name. And so they're not going to tie it back to you if that's important to you. And so I could be chatting with Sarah, and Sarah, you could tell me where the body was buried and who we shot, and they won't know it was you making that confession.
Later on in court, my name is not attached to the location.
But the reality is screenshots are the least of your problems. It's, if in a normal course of conversation, we're not worried about that stuff. It's the things that we say just in normal life that can be saved and forwarded and be taken out of context. You and I could be talking, Sarah, and I could send you a text back. We could be talking about a business deal, and I could say, I love you. That was amazing. And you forward it to somebody, and it gets taken out of context, and there's a problem.
Right.
And, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and, there's going to be a time where she texts some idiot that she likes, right? And he keeps the text and shows it to his friends. And the problem is that those things can live forever. And, I trust my daughter. She's going to make good decisions, but it's that one decision where she does the right thing, but some guy who's an idiot decides to take advantage, doesn't, and it lives on forever and takes on a life of its own. And so, an application like CyberDust, it's more about just taking control of your messaging, and particularly your text messaging, and this becomes a great alternative.
I'm a really huge fan of Shark Tank, and I know some people have come on the show and they've pitched apps before. Have any of those pitches influenced how you're getting the word out about CyberDust and just telling people that the app exists?
You're setting me up for something, and I'm spacing on the answer.
No, nothing. No, nothing at all. I'm just curious because every once in a while there's someone who comes on to pitch an app, and it's such a crowded marketplace right now, right? I know you're doing a lot of interviews and trying to get the word out, and I'm just curious, your process for doing that. It seems like you're out there kind of front and center right now doing a lot of these interviews, and it's helping a ton, I would imagine. Yeah,
there's no question. I've got a great platform where people will hear me out on a bunch of things like CyberDust. They're curious what I'm doing. But there's nothing like Shark Tank as a platform for promotion. Literally, if I had a choice between promoting, whether it's an app, a product, or service, on Shark Tank for the 10-minute pitches or on the homepage of Amazon, I'll take Shark Tank every time. Literally, we can sell hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of apps even. There's one company, Cycloramic, which has an app that does a full 360
we've showed that on the show before.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And it just blew it out the doors. It became #1 app in photo and video, which is nearly impossible, in 10 minutes. And so it's a great platform. But going out there and talking about the app and giving real world examples and showing how CyberDust really is the equivalent of doing face-to-face communications, I think that's what has to be done, because once I can get the word out there, then we're able to start getting feedback and iterate on the app and improve the app and talk to smart people like you and Sarah and just make it better. And, from that feedback, we're coming up with updates every 2 weeks. Like I showed you the example of not showing the name at the top of a message. So, the more I can try to push it out there, the more feedback I can get, the smarter the app will be and the more people that will use it.
Mark, you mentioned you've got a 10-year-old daughter. Obviously, we're coming into sort of a new generation of young people who are communicating and don't know life without smartphones. How much do you think they care about privacy, or is this just the need and the yearning of a new generation to do things differently?
No, I think they go hand in hand. It's not so much that they care about privacy, like they're concerned whether, they're being cookied or not, or whether someone's using facial recognition on them. I think that's one element of privacy they're not concerned. But I don't think, because it's not new to them, when we all started emailing, we kept our emails because why wouldn't you? And we start texting, which is relatively new. We develop certain habits, and a lot of people keep a lot of text unless they use iMessage and it blows out all their hard drive on their phone or their PC. But because why wouldn't you keep them? But now I think, particularly, we're learning from people's experience and how they use Snapchat. It's like, why would I keep it? And I think that's the difference. Kids today realize and are a lot more aware and educated on all the things that can go bad with social media and with messaging. We're beating them over the head. Don't put up bad things on Facebook or Pinterest or Tumblr or any of your social media outlets. Don't put out bad things on Twitter. Stay away from certain things on Twitter. And so they realize that things online, and they've seen it with their friends, things online can take on a life of their own. So on one hand, they're not concerned about the government's intervention. They're not concerned about cookies and privacy from that perspective. But they do know that what you say and do online can and will be used against you in the court of public opinion and amongst your friends in particular. And for that reason, they're saying, you know what, there's no reason for me to give anybody any fodder or for me to give somebody something to mess with me. And so that's why Snapchat, that's why Cyberjust are just blowing up.
Speaking of social media, we have quite a few questions for you. And
Sure.
I would say about 30% of the tweets that we received are around this topic. This particular one from Andrew Todd says, will Cyberdust be available on Android soon? And everybody seems to want to know that.
Yeah, next month. Basically a month, 3.5 weeks. We're shooting for about April 20th, April 21st to get it out there. And then after that, it'll be Windows, and then after that, it'll be web.
All right, that's awesome. I have to ask you, Mark, because the whole temporary data and anonymity kind of go hand in hand. They're both really big trends.
Sure.
What do you think about, you've got apps like Secret and Whisper, and people are supposed to be able to express themselves without fear of being judged for who they are. But that's tricky too, because then you get into something that sometimes seems very mean-spirited or unnecessary. Is that just people's behavior? How do we walk this line?
I think it's cool now because now you get to dish dirt and I think 99% of the things that are on Whisper and Secret are made up anyways. I don't think it's really secrets. It'd be like, I think it's more, well, I'm going to tell this story and see what the response is and see how people react to it. And so I think it's temporary. I don't see it as being a long-term thing because at some point, the people who are looking, and look, I use Secret, not so much Whisper, but I get on Secret every now and then when I'm bored and I want to see the messages. And it's cool. The voyeurism aspect of it is cool, but I don't really read it thinking, oh, all that stuff is true. This company's being bought, this person's sleeping with this animal, whatever it may be. It's just nonsense stuff more often than not that's, I compare Secret more to The Onion than I do to anything that's real.
It's a great comparison. Just one more question from social media. This one is from Google+, and I do think that you touched on this at the top of our conversation, but I think it's a really important point. Jake asks, in a world of ever-increasing public access to private information, how does Cyberdust make sure conversations are private? So maybe he wants you to dig into that a little bit more.
Sure. I mean, no one else sees them. I don't know who no one knows who is friends with who. We don't track any of that. We don't keep phone numbers. The only thing we keep and we protect it is your email. So if you lose your password, then we can resend your password, and that's it. Nothing else. There's nothing that's cached on your mobile device. And the minute it's read or 12 hours, whichever comes first, it's deleted from our servers. And we never know what's on there. We never know who sees it. We don't care. So, we can't go retrieve it, and we can't tell anybody else that's there. There's no record of the conversation at all. So it's not like a phone call where there's a phone company record. It's not like a text where there's a phone company carrier record. There's nothing. There's no trail at all. And that's also the reason why we kept it very simple, because there are some apps out there that want you to set a timer. They want you to say, define different levels of protection. And in our mind, it slowed things down too much. But more importantly, the choices you make in levels of protection also say something about the conversation. So we didn't ever want to put somebody in the position of saying, okay, Amber, okay, Sarah, why did you protect your conversation between each other to level X when you only protected this conversation to level X minus 1? And because of that sent a message, that defined the conversation. Because when someone's trying to use data, whether it's metadata or actual conversation data against you, they will assign a context. They will assign a definition. And we didn't want to give them any fodder at all. In this app, it's always the same length. There's no choices. It's just like texting. And because of that, we can't say this. No one can presume that one conversation is any more or less important than another, or that people are only using CyberDust because they're trying to hide something. Again, this is just about taking control of your messaging, and we're not trying to make this a super secure app and compete with NSA, intrusion. We're trying to say you have the option between losing control of your messaging when you text or gaining control of your messaging when you're CyberDusting, and that's what, we think we're a better solution.
I have to ask you, just because it's been such big news this week, Facebook buying Oculus VR, virtual reality. A lot of us are scratching our heads like, it's the future, but how is that exactly going to be Facebook's model going forward? How much do you think virtual reality is the new mobile messaging, as Mark Zuckerberg said?
Oh, it's not. I mean, it's not at all, right? It's not mobile messaging at all until and if and only if we start wearing headsets of some sort. If I had to guess, I would say that this was more a reaction to Google Glasses. Well, let me take a step back. First, I think what Facebook is doing is trying to own best of breed in as many different areas as they can. So when they had a chance to buy Snapchat, they bought Instagram, they bought WhatsApp. And so wherever they can get best of breed in a means for communications, I think they're going after it. And so I understand the Oculus acquisition there. Now, if you think that people are going to be wearing things, and if you think that the Oculus headset is going to get tinier and tinier and tinier as capabilities and CPU performance improves, then okay, you can make the argument that this isn't a this year, this isn't a gaming acquisition, this isn't an entertainment acquisition. But if you could take Oculus Rift and put it on a chip in 6 years or 4 years and use it for messaging and use it for immersive technology, all right, maybe you want, you want Facebook to be that interface. And I can make that argument, but, it'll be interesting to see.
Just because we promised we wouldn't keep you too long, I do want to ask, what's next for you? Are there going to be other apps, or are you planning to focus on this one for a while?
I like this one because I think we can take it in a lot of different directions. I think the more people realize how much they're being profiled online, the more they're going to shrink their digital footprint. When you go to Twitter and you follow somebody, you retweet somebody, you reply to somebody, you tweet to somebody, you're basically defining a profile of who you are. What kind of music you like, what your politics are, the sports teams, where you live, who your friends are, how old your friends are, how young your friends are, how you dress, so many different things. And trust me, in talking to the companies I trust to talk to, all these things are being put together. So I know more about Amber and Sarah than Sarah think they know about Amber and Sarah. And I mean, literally, there's a conversation. I have this company called Little Bird that does influence analysis on social media accounts. And if you just, we've discussed adding neural language NLP stuff where neurolinguistic stuff where we'll go through and be able to input someone's name, do a complete analysis of anything they have that's public out there in social media, and through that analysis know everything we need to know about them so we can sell them stuff. That's going to happen. That's happening right now. And I think that's going to scare the hell out of people,
well,
the more they know about it.
And it is, at least the people who have a pretty good understanding of how these things work, it is already scaring people. Do you think that we're all going to be using Twitter in 5 years?
I think Twitter will be around in 5 years. I think it'll continue to serve the purpose of being a headline service and being a personal broadcast service. You know, the three of us love using it because it's a far simpler way to communicate with a lot of people than it was before. But I think we're going to see that we're going to see some circumstances change so that there's going to be, I might have a Twitter account, and then I think we'll be offering commercial CyberDust account so that on a daily basis, I can send a private message to 100,000, 1 million people, and they can communicate back to me, but no one else knows that they're following me. Only I know that they're following me, and no one else sees the broadcast message that I sent to them. And if they reply to it in a retweet type format, only I see it, and only the two of us see the response. And so I think taking it, and making a lot of what we do with Twitter ephemeral and making it private, I think that's going to be one of the solutions, and hopefully CyberDust will be part of that solution. But it'll be interesting to see what Twitter does with it.
It kind of takes the popularity contest out of it too, which is, it always feels good, but anybody who understands how the internet works knows that a lot of stuff is just spam anyway. These are dummy accounts, and it creates this false sense of,
no question,
security, I guess.
Yeah, and we get it in sports more than anything, because I know I have a ton. I've got 2.1 million followers. Probably 2,000,001 are fake accounts from Lakers and Spurs and Jazz fans, so they could just say you suck all the time. So yeah, it's the nature of the beast. But yeah, you're right. It's a great platform to have. Twitter is a great tool, but at some point, I'd rather be able to say, okay, Amber, if we want to talk, or Sarah, follow me at Blog Maverick on CyberDust, and every day we're going to have an AMA equivalent, a Reddit AMA equivalent, but only you and I are going to see the questions and the answers. And I think there's a real place for that.
Yeah, there definitely is. It makes a lot of sense. And apologies in advance, because a lot of people are asking you on Twitter. They have tech questions. They have questions.
Well, I've got another 50. If you guys got a little bit more time, I can say, because I kept you waiting. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I apologize again for all the lighting. It's kind of creepy, but
no, you look very heavenly. You look very ethereal.
Like I said, it's pretty creepy.
It's all good. Just to pick up on a question here on Twitter from Divya, who says, please ask Mark Cuban what the revenue model is going to be. How are they going to keep this going? So a lot of people.
Well, I kind of insinuated it a little bit, that there'll be commercial accounts, and if you look at people trying to have platforms for private AMAs, that'll be the direction that we go. And there's some other things that but it's not going to be, we're going to get everybody to use it, then we'll sell corporate accounts, and that's how we'll make our money. That's not the plan.
Mm-hmm. Great.
CyberDust is, I love it. Obviously, it's free, and we get very used to everything being free. And if it's not free, it's like, well, why isn't it free? We're all so used to that, at least at the beginning, while an app or a company is ramping up their user base. But how do you set yourself apart, besides the fact that you're obviously a public figure, you have a large platform, you can get the word out? There are a lot of messaging apps, and
it's just got to work.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to work. It's got to be simple. It's got to be easy. It's got to be free. And it's up to me to figure out alternative revenue models, and I can. And the good news is there's not a large cost to doing this in terms of storage and files and stuff like that. So it's not super expensive to sustain, relatively speaking. And so that'll allow us to stay forever as we grow our revenue model. But look, it's just got to be a great product. And we realize we have to iterate and continue to upgrade every couple of weeks. We realize we have to be on every platform. This version, the real release of it's only been out since February 27th. And so, and we've already got, growing almost to 10,000 daily average users, which is phenomenal. And, the retention rate is phenomenal. And so people are finding ways to use it and finding good reasons to use it. And most of the other messaging apps that offer the disappearing aspect or security aspect aren't there to replace texting. They have very high-end corporate, mess with the NSA type encryption, whereas we're trying to go after the really simple texting market And I think really, and people might say, well, WhatsApp and the rest can add to yours. I think it's easier for us to add WhatsApp features than it is for them to do what we're doing, just because of the habits that have been created.
One of the things I saw you say in an interview on USA Today was that I want it to be a complement to texting. And I think that's a really great way to describe what this tool is. It's not replacing it necessarily. It really is just a complement to you. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. I mean, look, there's certain things that when you text, you want people to keep, and you want to be able to remember from, here's the address. And by the way, we'll have a solution for that where you'll just be able to send a VCF card or an iCal for to get addresses, or an eVipe to be able to do that. And then they'll all integrate right into your phone, and then the rest will disappear. But, there's certain things you want to text, there's certain things you want to email. And for everything else, we want you to use CyberDust. Again, there's just no good reason to give up control of your messages forever and face all those risks. And, we just think it's a better alternative. And, I think we'll come up with some tools that will allow you eventually to replace texting altogether. I mean, again, even the most innocent things with kids in middle school can turn into a mistake that lives on forever. And I think, that's the lesson that Snapchat has taught people. And look, Snapchat is a social network, and that's their goal. And, their stories do a great thing, and we're never going to get into that. But at the same time, the fact that, kids want to be able to say, in the here and now, here's a picture. We want them to be able to say, in the here and now, like a face-to-face conversation, here's a CyberDust message, here's a CyberDust picture. And here's a little Easter egg for everybody that does have CyberDust. If you go to the home page and you click on the logo that's in the upper right corner, there's just the CyberDust logo, and you click on it, it shows you that you can blast a message or a picture to all your friends. And so it's a little Snapchat-ish, but it's an example of things that we're going to be adding. And so again, there's going to be times when you just want to blast things out to all your friends. Here's where the party is, and you don't want them forwarding it, or here's what happened today, or to all your employees. And so those things that you don't want living on no matter what, CyberDust is just a better solution than Snapchat or messaging.
You mentioned alternative forms of communication. Obviously, there's the text form, whether it's on CyberDust or SMS or a tweet. Then the Snapchat model, which is a little of everything, but it's more photo and video based. And then you've got emojis and stickers. Yeah. And it's one of those things that it took a while for me to sort of realize that they're fun to use rather than really silly and stupid. Right. Why do you think that as humans we have glommed onto these somewhat weird forms of communicating with each other?
Really, really, really simple, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. And so if I just hit the emoji on CyberDust that just says hi, it saves me time. It's quicker. A bye or a basketball, whatever it is. They're goofy, but they send a message in a lot less time. It's just more efficient. If I send you the little CyberDust monkey with the dollars in his eyes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It just simplifies things, and it's fun, and it communicates a bigger message in a lot less time and a lot fewer keystrokes and a lot fewer words.
I've noticed a lot of people in my community getting really comfortable with sending DMs on Twitter and messages through Facebook that are really personal. They'll send me their phone number, their home address, all these really details that should remain personal in a personal space. What advice do you have to people who feel comfortable sharing through these different platforms through what they think are private messaging tools?
You're about to get burned. I mean, it's really, real simple. I mean, look, as we've released CyberDust, and I've gone in and Twitter DM'd some folks, and you go, it's just natural. We kind of get a little bit creepy, and we look through their pictures, and we look through their tweets and everything, and you start seeing that the text that they've posted from other people. If I just went there, or one of us or any of us just went through and just retweeted one of those texts, they're SOL, and I think hopefully friends will tell friends, don't put private information, don't put personal information, even the most innocent things, into any medium that can be forwarded or saved without your knowledge, or even with your knowledge. And so you have to be really, really careful. And I think that really happens with, kids who are 25 and older, not so much 25 and younger, because younger kids, have already been burned, or they've seen their friends burned, or they've been the victim of bullying or trying to be influenced. And so they really keep things a lot more personal. And I think they realize that Facebook has kind of become the refrigerator door. You know, when you have your parents coming over, you put certain pictures on the refrigerator door. When you have your buddies coming over, the little more risque, drunk pictures go on the refrigerator door. You know, that's what Facebook has become. But not everybody realizes that, particularly, you know, 25 and older. And so I think, you know, with CyberDust, it's like, hey, this is a better alternative. Don't use Facebook messaging. You can be, and never, ever, ever send private information like that. And that's one other advantage of CyberDust as well. When you're texting, you're giving out your phone number. That's not good. You know, particularly for a young woman, even, you know, regardless, gender, you know, is irrelevant, I guess. You know, your phone number gets in the wrong hands. You know, there's no way to stop an onslaught of somebody bothering you. I mean, you know, it's difficult to block a text, and there's just so many better alternatives that it almost makes no sense to, if you're concerned even a little bit, it makes no sense to text at all because your phone number gets out there.
Do you think that the not just the disappearing messages, the ephemeral messaging trend, but local storage in general is kind of going away forever? We're so used to backing up things in the cloud and not really needing all of these huge albums of our lives on Facebook necessarily. People are still doing that, but I feel like the trend is moving away and more of a, well, it's all virtually backed up. Is that the way of the future? Nobody needs these shoe boxes full of information in our closets anymore?
Pretty much. I mean, until something bad happens, right? Where, you know, Dropbox loses something or Google Drive loses a lot of things. Until then, I mean, we all do it. Now, you know, I'm old school, so I tend to back everything up to, you know, an external drive just to have it. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I have that I just pop up there and it's like, you know, and then I forget to download it to back it up until, you know, I'm bored one day once a year. And so, yeah, there's no question that people are leveraging cloud storage to kind of simplify their lives. And you never know, depending on the cost of printing, we may go back, in our concerns about security, we may go back to printing out pictures. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. I just have one final question for you, and this is a broader question because I know I've emailed you in the past, and you're very quick and you're very active on Twitter, and I'm curious how you manage all of the messages coming at you on a daily basis. I mean, do you have any tips or any solutions that all of us could use in the long run?
Well, first of all, I don't do meetings or phone calls, right? And that allows me to focus my time on just, you know, going to email or CyberDust or randomly text. But you know, you learn, right? Just like you do. You guys get a lot of messages as well. And you can tell within the first 30 seconds of reading an email where it's going. And I'm, you know, hey, I have this idea, click, delete key, right? I need money for delete, you know. And so that takes away I get anywhere from 500 to 700 on busy days, 1,000 messages in a day, which is not nearly as bad as it sounds because, like I said, within the first paragraph or two, I know, and in 30 seconds I'm through. Whereas, you know, in a phone call, it's like, okay, Amber, we're going to talk about this. I'll call you. Hey, how you doing? Right. What you been doing?
I'm totally with you.
You know, it's annoying and it's crazy. So it's just by forcing everybody to email or CyberDusting me, particularly in CyberDust, it's like, look, you have to get your message across because I only have 30 seconds to read it. And if I have any interest, then I'll say, okay, email me more. But it just speeds everything up, and by doing it via email. And I guess the only tip I have, my tickler file is really my unread messages. So I use Gmail, and unread messages kind of, okay, here's what I have to start off with, and I go through those. And if I can keep those down to a minimum, then my days go by fairly quickly.
One last message from me too, Mark, and this is also a little bit of a broader question. You mentioned with CyberDust, you said you had one of your companies build this app because you thought it was a great idea and you think it's the future. for anybody who's watching this interview or listening and thinking, well, but it's Mark Cuban and he's got all this money and he's got multiple companies, he can do whatever he wants. But you said it's relatively easy to build an app once you have a great idea. What is your advice, kind of that entrepreneurial advice for people who might have good ideas and don't know how to make their mark in the tech world?
You know, that's a problem, because the idea is always the easiest part. There's nobody on the planet that doesn't have an idea that they don't think is incredibly valuable. The hard part is doing the work to turn it into a real business. I mean, I've always had ideas, and it wasn't until I realized, okay, you know, just sharing my ideas with people and getting good feedback wasn't paying my bills. I had to actually go do something, and it took me getting fired from a company way back when to push me to do it. And so when people have ideas, you can't just Google it and say, oh, wow, no one else is doing it, it's a great idea. Well, maybe 50 companies have done it, but it's such a bad idea, they're out of business and you can't find them on Google anymore. You literally, the only way to do it is to say, even if it's part-time while you're working a regular job, is to say, look, I need to figure out how to start this company. I need to have the tools to do it. And you know, in my case, I taught myself how to program to start creating some of the things I wanted to create. And there's so many tools now to teach yourself how to program. If you if you care enough, if it's that important enough to you to create an app, then there's tools that simplify creating apps, or there's online classes that teach you how to program and do it. If it's that important, you'll teach yourself and take the time. If you're not ready to do that, the other advice I tell people all the time is, you're getting paid to learn. Find a job in an industry that you care about, that you want to be great at, and get a job. And you know, that's what I did. I spent a lot in college, but I learned a whole lot more working for the company I got fired from, and they paid me to learn. And so, you know, there's nothing wrong with just delaying your plans, getting paid to learn, saving some money, and then putting yourself in a position based off of what you learned to go out and start something.
I think your tweet from, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that says, "My life is my classroom," is probably a good way to end this conversation. I'm a student forever.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's just, you got to always be learning.
Mark, thank you so much for
anytime, guys.
I mean, you know, not only great advice, tech advice, life advice, but a really cool app, and it's nice to hear some of the background on how it came to be and how you think tech and our communication with each other is going in the future, and also that you don't believe in phone calls or meetings. So you're basically
let me just tell everybody, if you download CyberDust, my ID is Blog Maverick, BLOGMAVERICK.
Oh, that's why you didn't get back to me. Blog Maverick. Well, now we know. I saw that Mark Cuban. That was the test account I set up early on, so that's why I didn't get back to you. All right.
But yeah, hit me up at Blog Maverick, and I'll get on there right away. And I'm sure I'm going to get inundated, so I'll get through them as best I can.
You will. And next month, Android version.
The next month, Android version, about 3.5 weeks.
Mark Cuban, thanks so much for being with us on the Social Hour. You're the best.
You guys are great. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
See ya.
See ya, guys.
Well, Amber, that was fun.
Yeah, that was really fun.
I mean, he's like, I got 10 more minutes, and I'm like, I can't think of anything I'd rather do.
Sarah and I are like, we'll take you for as long as you
stay. As long as you want to be on the show. Yeah, no, that's, I know that Mark is, you know, he's in a crowded space as far as messaging apps go. We talk about messaging apps on the Social Hour constantly. Anytime there's something new, it's like we feel like we have to cover it. But they do have an interesting twist with CyberDust, and I do think that there's even stuff that I do. For example, on IM, on messages, on OS 10 on my Mac, I purposely turn off backup messages because I feel like when you're having an instant message conversation, and I guess this applies to text too, kind of, it's like you're having a conversation face-to-face. It's not face-to-face, but I like to treat it that way, and I don't really like the idea of going back over some sort of a chat, and yeah, maybe if I'm in an argument with somebody, pulling, well, you said at 3:55, you said this thing. I almost feel like that's somewhat unhealthy for me. It's a tool that I don't want. So, and I don't know how much behavior has to change for people to embrace the apps like CyberDust and Snapchat. And I know that a lot of people are like, I just don't get it. I'm not sure. Is that an age thing? Is it what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's becoming such a concern for so many people of all ages that I feel like it's changing really, really quickly, right? I mean, you just look at the popularity of apps like you mentioned, like Snapchat and Secret and Whisper getting more attention. Then we have Cyber Dust. I mean, not that it's happening overnight, but I do think there is this huge push where people do want to have more private conversations. And there's an intimacy about text messages, I think, that you don't get in the email space. And I hope it stays like that, because I always find it is that more personal network than you would get if you were just doing straight up emails. So really interesting conversation with him. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. And what I love about him and what we talked about is how hands-on he is, right? It's not like he's this guy who invested in an app who doesn't know about the communities at large. I mean, he is definitely a user and understands how all of this works and how all of it's kind of integrated together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got a few other things to talk about before we wrap up the social hour. It hasn't been an hour yet, but before we do that, we definitely want to take a moment to thank lynda.com. In fact, Mark was talking about taking classes, teaching yourself skills. He said he was teaching himself programming because he knew he was going to need it if he was going to move in the direction that he ended up moving into. Well, lynda.com is absolutely right up Mark's alley. If you're watching this show, you're interested in social media, obviously. Well, we hope so anyway. But there's programs and tools to make you a better communicator. Video tutorials on lynda.com feed right into that. There are a bunch of tutorials, hundreds of them, over 2,000 courses, thousands is what I meant, with more added every single day. And it's all about new courses include foundations of programming. Okay, how about programming for kids? You might have a kid who's just would be a perfect programmer. Up and running with 3D printing. 3D printing is going to be huge. Wouldn't it be nice if you were at the forefront of that? Up and running with Constant Contact, UX design tools, Photoshop. Lynda.com spans all types of classes, and the instructors are professionals. The studios are state of the art. Everything looks really, really professional, high quality stuff, and curated course content as well. Each lynda.com course is structured, so you as a user can say, all right, I'm ready, I'm gonna go from start to finish, or you can jump around to find answers that you need on the go. Plus they have searchable transcripts, so you can search inside a video, you can save time for yourself, you can find exactly what you're looking for. Yeah, maybe you're doing that Photoshop tutorial, and there's just that one tool you need an answer on. That's lynda.com for you. You can watch from your computer, tablet, mobile device. You can switch screens mid-tutorial, not a problem. Pick up each course wherever you left off. It's all about learning at your own pace on your own schedule. So learn something new this year, 2014. This is your year, everybody, with lynda.com. It's only $25 per month for access to the entire course library, or for $37.50 per month, you can subscribe to the premium plan, which includes exercise files. It lets you follow along with the instructor's project and use their exact same assets. And you can try lynda.com right now, a free 7-day trial. Take advantage of that. We want you to learn something. Visit lynda.com/social hour. Learn something new anyway. You probably know a lot of stuff already. To access the entire library, again, that's over 2,000 courses, all free. Completely free, no strings attached for 7 days. lynda.com/social hour. All right, Amber, well, we don't have that much more time to talk about all of the stuff that we wanted to talk about, because thankfully Mark had time to talk to us, but I think we should probably talk about the new features in mobile Twitter. That's kind of crazy. You can start tagging people in photos now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. So you can add up to 4 photos in a tweet. You can also, like you said, tag up to 10 people. The good news is it's not going to take away from your 140 character count, which I'm sure a lot of people are concerned with. That's short enough already. I do think it's interesting. I have to say there have been times where I have thought that it would be nice to be able to post more than one picture on Twitter. And obviously, as we've talked about the rise of visual social media over the past year or so, it makes a lot of sense for them to allow us to do more with our pictures on that social network.
I think it'll definitely help give people more of a reason to upload photos to Twitter. I rarely do, unless I'm linking to something maybe that I posted on Instagram, because I think of Instagram as not just a place that's photo focused, but again, it's easy to tag people. There's more context there. So yeah, I think that Twitter's on the right track, certainly, with being able to tag up to 10 people and it not counted against your character count, but so you could still do those 140 characters. It does seem a little bit like Facebook chasing, though, and maybe that's just because Facebook had such a big week, this whole virtual reality shift, and we're all trying to figure out what Mark Zuckerberg is thinking and what the company is going to be doing, and are we all going to be like Facebook on our faces type thing, and then you go, oh, and then Twitter lets you tag photos. But I guess it was inevitable because it's a good tool, especially since Twitter cares about search and archiving a lot more than they used to, or that they had the capacity to.
Yeah, and I think if you do use Twitter to post photos, and I do on a regular basis, I didn't always, but I started posting natively to Twitter maybe 6 months ago, and I do it on a regular basis. So I do think it makes it much more visual as far as a platform, and it's a good, easy move for them, right? I mean, it's not like it's really changing the way that people use Twitter, but instead it's just kind of enhancing it, which I don't think is such a bad idea.
Yeah. You know, Mark mentioned dummy accounts, especially in the sports world, you know, so people can talk smack to each other. There's an interesting little tool that somebody had suggested to me earlier this week. I thought it was a great social tip to see how many fake followers you have. Now, the service itself is at let me wait till it's fakers.statuspeople.com. And if I go ahead and say, all right, I'll go ahead and connect to Twitter here on my, go ahead and authorize the app. Yes, yes, yes. So this is something that you have to authorize. And I have been burned in the past by apps, by me letting them authorize with Twitter. And then a year later, after I've forgotten that I did that, there's like a weird spammy tweet sent by me in the middle of the night, and I get really mad. So I'm not exactly sure. You know, I guess I can't vouch for this because I don't know who made this tool, but it allows you to get basically your fake score. The more followers you have, the more fake accounts are following you. That's just kind of the way that Twitter works. Okay, so if I go ahead and I run my numbers, it says that 15 of the accounts are fake. They don't actually represent real people. 51 of them are inactive. And I believe that inactive means that, you know, they haven't tweeted in, I think it's like 100 days or something like that. And then 30% of them are good folks that actually care about what I'm saying and might click on a link to the social hour. That's somewhat depressing, although it does go along with, I think, Amber, a stat that I read this week is up to, 30% of all web traffic is just kind of bogus, and advertising companies are going to have to accept that and figure out what these actual numbers should represent, which is scary for a lot of people who work in this industry, but it is a fact, and we can't keep pretending that more is better.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, the interesting thing is when I just did this using this tool, my numbers are pretty close to yours. 20% fake, 46% inactive, and 34% good.
Wow.
So we're around the same benchmark. I think I have used this tool before with certain people where I suspected that they had a lot of fake followers. And I've had people whose numbers, as far as the fake numbers, have been above 50%. And at that point, you start to suspect that they have been buying followers, which I know some people do, although we've encouraged people not to do it because it's easy to be found out in many ways. So it's interesting to use tools like this just to see what a small percentage of your social network, like you said, is actually active, right? You know, if you have 100,000 Twitter followers, well, hey, there's only 35,000 potentially that are even real people having conversations.
Yeah, and I've seen echoes of this on other social networks as well. Om Malik, obviously the founder of Gig Om, had said he has something like 300,000 people who are following a Facebook page of his. And he's seen click-through rates that are just abysmal. You know, it's hundreds of clicks, and it's like, these just aren't great platforms for the kind of work that a lot of us are doing, where we say, hey, we made this thing. We'd like to share it with you. You care about us, right? This is how we let you know about it. And there just isn't always, I mean, sometimes there's a great community and social networking is what you make of it, but I think more than ever, even I am starting to realize it just doesn't matter. The numbers just don't matter, and they force us to behave in kind of strange ways. And once we realize it's totally about quality, not quantity, then you make better decisions, really, and you can be yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And we also just introduced a segment a couple of weeks ago called Gig of the Week for people who are in the social media world who are looking for jobs. And we've had a couple of great postings. Now, this one isn't a job posting. However, it is perhaps a new social media job that has come to fruition. And maybe you want to copy it if you want to make some money. It was just announced that W Hotels in New York has created a position. And there's someone there who is called a social media wedding concierge.
Ooh.
And for $3,000, this individual will document your wedding. They will create a wedding hashtag. They'll set up a wedding blog. They'll do a dream honeymoon Pinterest board to inspire people, and they'll live tweet the big day. So it's getting a lot of attention online, some good, some bad. People saying it's ridiculous to pay someone $3,000 to do this, although I do think in some ways it's kind of a fun idea. Maybe you don't have to pay that much money. Maybe you have a relative who would do it.
Well, yeah, yeah, the live tweet thing, I think it's probably easy for someone to jump on that and say, well, why would anybody want to have a wedding live tweeted? That's just stupid. That's just a stupid way to make money. But hey, weddings are tough to plan. They're a lot of work. Putting together a wedding website, and yes, in this day and age, how do you communicate with Aunt Martha who can't make the wedding? And it's kind of a good idea, really, to have that tech arm concierge, if indeed you have a big enough wedding that you actually want all those details. But it's a pretty good gig, I would think. I would like to do that.
It'd be fun. I mean, I just had a friend, I guess on Tuesday, who got married in the Bahamas, but I was out in Vegas for work. And unfortunately, I missed her wedding. And I kept going onto Facebook to see if people were posting pictures. Of course, there were one or two, not a lot. But if there was someone there who was live tweeting and posting pictures, I would have felt like, oh, I was much more involved in the whole experience. So I think especially for destination weddings, I could see people doing this, although maybe that fee's a little high. But if you're a social media entrepreneur and you love the marketing space, you could offer this. It could be one of your services.
Yes. Well, if this whole podcasting thing doesn't work out, I offer myself to be
there you go.
Wedding concierge. I will live tweet. The bride is about to be kissed. Okay, all right, mazel. Yeah. We love hearing from all of you, especially during our interview with Mark. It was so nice to get all of these questions coming in, particularly, Amber is very good at monitoring Twitter while we're doing the show, but we also accept questions via email, thesocialhour@twit.tv. Not just questions, but stuff that you'd like us to review or topics that you'd like us to cover. Anything is fair game. You can leave us a voicemail at 2626-SOCIAL. It's our Google Voice inbox, 2626 SOCIAL. If you want to record a video of, I don't know, a question or a comment, or maybe even a demo of a social tool that you like, or you have concerns about, or really anything, a trend piece, you can record that video, upload it somewhere, send us the link. Now, Amber, we would never end a show without something like a rad or a fad, where we decide if something is here to stay or gone tomorrow.
Yeah, this is the story that has been making headlines this week. And the title of the story on dose.ca is Mother's Efforts to Warn 12-Year-Old Daughter About Social Media Seriously Backfire. And what this particular mom did is she got her daughter to hold up a sign, her 12-year-old daughter, that said, Mom is trying to show me how many people can see a picture once it's on the internet. So she got her daughter to hold up that sign. She posted this picture to a bunch of different social media websites and tried to show her daughter that this would spread all around the web. And of course it did, Sarah. And a lot of people saw it, unfortunately, and it ended up getting turned into a meme. And a lot of people saying, hey, that's not the best way to teach your child a lesson. Someone even photoshopped on top of her picture and said, maybe you shouldn't use your daughter as an experiment to prove your point, just an idea. And it went sideways really fast.
So, Amber, now, what am I missing here? Because I feel like the point that Mom was making is you have to realize that this stuff can spread really quickly. And as Mark Cuban was making the point of earlier in our show, during our talk with him, once it's out there, it no longer belongs to you. It belongs to whoever wants to pass it around or doctor it up, or create some sort of another version, meme it up type of a thing. So didn't Mom make her point? I mean, her daughter's face is grayed out, or is that still kind of creepy?
Yeah, I just still think it's kind of creepy. I mean, the only reason I put it into rad or fad is because I think we're seeing more parents do stuff like this where they're trying to prove something to a child. Maybe they make them part of an experiment. That is just never a good idea. I think it goes against what you're trying to prove. Although she may have at first initially proved her point, the reality is once you put her picture out there, even if her face is grayed out, whatever it might be, it ends up turning her into a joke on the internet. And that's never a good thing either. So I think when it comes to experimenting with your child in the online space, it's better not to do it. And I hope this is just a fad that some parents think is a good idea, because it's definitely not a rad solution for dealing with something like this.
There are a lot of savvy parents out there. You are one of them, certainly, Amber. But I think in general, especially because, without knowing anything about this family, I'd say the daughter's probably junior high-ish age type of a thing, and possibly in danger of sharing too much. The parents teaching the kids about communication usually backfires, because kids they want to communicate in ways that don't necessarily jive with what the parents are teaching them, because it's a rebellious thing. That's certainly not to say that parents should just give up and not try to teach their kids good tools and smart behavior and know about their own privacy. But yeah, I think mom may have gotten a little bit more than she bargained for.
Yeah, it's definitely a fad that I hope will go away very soon. And a lot of people hopefully have learned a lesson here just by watching her experiment with this. So an interesting story. And I think it's one of those things where, again, we just have all learned a lot from it.
Well, I feel like I've learned a lot in this hour, Amber. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to write some apps, learn some code. I've got lynda.com, the whole thing.
Sarah, we didn't pitch Mark on our filter for Skype. We could have fixed his whole problem of this sort of
We basically created
effect.
Our very own episode of Shark Tank, and we blew it.
We blew it.
We blew it so hard. I hate myself.
Oh, my God.
Skype with filters.
Skype with filters.
I think we may have to work on our elevator pitch a little bit, because, as he said, in 30 seconds, if it's not good, he's hung up on us already.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be for our encore interview. We'll get all that VC money. It's going to be great.
We'll have him back again. Yeah, you're right. We have to work on our pitch a little bit. So we could do a show with him where maybe we pitched him. We had like 30 seconds, and maybe we pitched him 5 different ideas, and he could just cut us down each time and see if he liked any.
Right. Yeah. Cut us down, build us back up, make us stronger. Yeah. So yeah, we know how the big dogs work in entrepreneurship. Well, this was a wonderful show, Amber. I know you're down in Florida still, enjoying a little bit of the southern Florida sunshine. Anything big coming up in the next week for you?
I don't think so. I'll be back here next week as well doing the show, and then making my way back to Toronto. And I'll be there, I guess, 2 weeks from now. So still going to work on booking some more awesome guests for the next couple of weeks. If anyone has suggestions for guests, please do let us know. There are so many amazing people out there doing great things in this space, so we can't keep up with everyone. So suggest a way, please.
Yes, absolutely. Amber and I are going to kind of go full throttle on guests going forward, because it's just so much fun. I mean, we love talking to each other, but it's so much fun to be able to bounce questions off of all of these smart people in the industry that we can all learn from. So that's kind of the idea, and hopefully you think that that's a good idea also. We also have a programming note. Everybody who wants to watch the Social Hour live next week, starting next Thursday, Amber and I move an hour later in the day. So we're 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern currently, and it's been that way since the first of the year. It's not just the Social Hour, a few other shows are moving as well, but starting next week, we are an hour later in the day, so 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern. What we're going to do is, Amber and I are now sandwiched very happily between Know How and Coding 101. And there are a lot of reasons for that, and it's mostly kind of boring inside baseball twit stuff, but it kind of makes more sense for everybody that works at Twit to have the show be a little bit later, and Amber and I are thrilled, so hopefully you can join us during your lunch hour or during your 3 p.m. lull if you're on the East Coast, and if you're somewhere else in the world, then I hope you can join us also. But if you can't, twit.tv/TSH is where all of our show archives live. If you ever miss a show, or you say, you know what, that Mark Cuban interview of theirs was great, I would love somebody to watch that interview again because I know that they didn't catch it, twit.tv/TSH is the place to go. This is episode 155, but they're all there. All of the stuff that we talk about each week. The videos are there as well. You know, Sarah Hill was a wonderful guest last week, Amber.
Yeah, she's great.
That's also, I mean, talk about inspirational, and I don't use that word lightly. She was quite an inspirational speaker about not just the future of Google Plus and Google Glass, but how we communicate in general. So yes, do definitely check out our website and subscribe to the show if you haven't already.
Yeah, definitely do. And we'll see you next week. Let your friends know about the show, and we'll work on some awesome guests.
All right. Until then, I'm Sarah Lane.
And I'm Amber MacArthur, and we'll see you soon.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.